So just copy the log in. Okay. I couldn't figure it out. So I didn't want to smooth it out. Nice. Thank you so much. All right, I think everyone is back. So let's go ahead and get started. Might be missing one person. So my name is Ken Cogshell. I am the Director of Admissions. I've spoken to a lot of you, met some of you already. So welcome. Thanks for being here. In addition to my duties as the Director of Admissions, I'm also the Title IX Coordinator, which I know you all know what that is, right? Really? I'm seeing some nods out there. Well, as Title IX Coordinator, it's my job to train students and employees on Title IX, which is what I'm doing today. And I have to ensure that the school is in compliance with the law, with Title IX. I receive any reports of potential Title IX violations. I then assess those reports, provide resources, whether those are, they might be legal resources, they might be just advisor in an advisory capacity. And then I have to stay up to date with the law and the training. So who has heard of Title IX? Can anyone tell me what it is? See that?
It's anti-discrimination laws.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. A lot of people, where Title IX has gotten the most attention is in women's collegiate sports. Because under Title IX, there has to be, you cannot discriminate on the basis of sex. So the case has been made in some colleges that unequal resources were being spent on men's athletic programs compared to women's athletic programs, and that's where it has gotten a lot of attention. But that's not all it is. It pertains to any school policy or activity or interaction that has to do with discrimination or harassment based on your sex or gender identity. So as you can see there, this includes sexual harassment, sexual violence, and sexual misconduct. And so the preamble for the Title IX Education Amendment of 1972 is that no person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. So it's any school that's receiving federal funds, which we are among those, has to adhere to the Title IX stipulations. So under Title IX, sex is defined as your biological sex, your gender identity, sexual orientation, or pregnancy. So you cannot, the school or other members of your student body cannot discriminate or harass you based on those things, on any of those characteristics. It applies to all members of the CCMS community. That includes students and applicants, employees, and people of all genders. So the prohibited conduct includes discrimination based on sex, harassment based on sex, sexual and interpersonal offenses like rape, domestic violence, stalking, and retaliation, and we'll get into those just a little bit deeper. So, discrimination, harassment, and retaliation are defined. Discrimination here, the focus is on sex. I say sex so many times in this presentation, that starts to be embarrassing. But it also applies to all protected classifications. Harassment based on sex is a form of discrimination imposed on an unwanted condition on a person's education program. So that's, so that covers, anything between, harassment or discrimination from faculty or from fellow students. Retaliation, that is taking adverse action against someone who engaged in a protected activity. So, for example, if someone filed a report that, say, another student was sexually harassing them, and then the person that is being accused then retaliates against that person for the report, any kind of retaliation, that would then also qualify as a Title IX infraction. Does that make sense? So you can't take revenge on people. That's basically what that is. So here's a breakdown of sexual and interpersonal offenses. Most of them are pretty obvious. Rape, sexual battery, domestic violence, dating violence. One that I want to call your attention to, though, is the very last one there, and that's telecommunications harassment. And this goes back to something that President Lechner had touched upon when he was talking about chat rooms, and how when you put it in the chat room, it stays there. So, that's the point he was making, but the point I'm making is related to that, is that if you're harassing someone, you're making unwanted advances, talking dirty on Facebook or text messages or whatever, and that is unwanted, that counts. That counts. It doesn't have to be an actual physical act. It doesn't have to be face-to-face. If you're harassing them electronically, digitally, that counts. So be careful. So the Violence Against Women Act, Mr. Vintage will talk a little bit more about the Clary Act when he gets to the safety portion. But the Violence Against Women Act amends the Clary Act, and it requires us to report hate crimes, crimes of domestic violence. So the federal government keeps track of these things, and we have to make a report. And it's a real pain. So just behave yourselves and save you some trouble, okay? It also requires us to adopt institutional policies to prevent and respond to sexual violence or harassment. And we also have to have in place student discipline procedures in the event of an infraction. So, sexual activity requires consent. And so here you can see the different kind of parameters of what consent is. That means informed, that's freely and actively given, that's mutually understandable, and specific to the given situation. And consent, and here's another thing too, consent can be withdrawn at any time. When someone says, if they said yes before, but now they're saying no, no means no. Another way, consent cannot be given if, due to incapacitation, intimidation, or coercion. And here's another one too. A lot of, prior relationship or an activity, that doesn't mean consent. Just because you've had a sexual relationship with someone in the past doesn't give you the right to, continue that relationship if the opposite party doesn't give consent. Just because she's your ex-girlfriend doesn't mean that it's okay to start harassing her. Consent also cannot be inferred by silence. So reporting an incident. So anytime that there's any kind that you perceive that you've been harassed or discriminated against, we encourage you to file a report. And you can file a report with me, with Mr. Vintage, or you can file a report or at least tell any faculty or staff, and then they will report it to me, and then I will file the report. We encourage you to do that. And I'll just put this in here. When I'm talking about this, and I don't want to be scaring people. These kind of things are extraordinarily rare in this school. Extraordinarily rare. I've talked to our attorney who has dealt with this thing, who has been our advisor on Title IX for 10, 12 years, and there's been like 3 incidents in that time, and 2 of which involved people that were not even students. So just to maybe put your mind at ease there. So then what happens when you make a report? So once you make a report, I'll write it up. Both parties get a copy of it. I assess it, and if it seems to rise to the level of a Title IX offense, then there's a couple different tracks we can take. One might involve us involving the attorney that I just mentioned. There might be a mutually agreed upon resolution. It might go to a full hearing, which involves a lengthy, drawn-out process. But what the process is designed to do is to protect the rights of the accused and the accuser. The accused has rights too, and just because somebody said that you did something doesn't mean that you did it. So we always want to make that plain, because we don't want to be a situation, you're on, the school is on so-and-so's side and they're not, protecting me, or, the other way around. So just, bear that in mind, that the accused has rights too. So some supportive measures that I can help you with is if you need access to medical or mental health treatment, access to off-campus resources, mutual restrictions on contact, that goes back to the mutually agreed upon resolution, and implementing interim measures, changing classes. We really can't change classes, but maybe transportation circumstances, or arrange, say, someone feels vulnerable walking to their car, we can figure out a way to maybe have someone walk with you, or things like that. So medical treatment and collection. So for victims of sexual and interpersonal offenses, you want to seek immediate medical evaluation. So this is going to be mostly within instances of rape or sexual assault and battery. The exam could be administered at a hospital. The sooner it's reported, the better. And that's for a couple reasons. One is that it's more likely that evidence will be present. Also, you don't want to be in a situation where, and you see this in the papers, it happens all the time, someone is saying that they were raped, that so-and-so raped them, but that happened 2 years ago. Well, why didn't you come forward? I mean, it's not fair, but somehow that lessens the validity of the complaint in many people's eyes. It shouldn't, but it does. So, nonetheless, so the point here is to report the incident as quickly as you can. Date rape drugs, including roofies and GHB, may still be present and can be tested for, so that's another reason to do it quickly. And we can also makes it easier to take inventory of where the evidence could be. So this is just kind of, kind of for your edification. So this is identifying relationship violence. So some of the red flags of relationship violence can include, if someone's trying to be overly controlling of another person, they're lying, there's evidence of physical or sexual abuse, respect, intimidation, dependent hostility. I mean, these are all things that as adults we should be able to recognize, but we got to spell them out for you. It's the one. There's also the issue of bystander intervention. Bystander is someone who witnesses an incident, and they can have a couple different paths or courses of action they can take. They can do nothing. They can act in a negative way or provide assistance. So if you are a bystander, if you are, we never want you to, endanger yourself. But one thing you can do if you think you're witnessing something, you can confront the situation, speak up. You can provide some kind of distraction, create some type of diversion, or ask for help. And that last one is probably, in terms of your own personal safety, it's probably the safest route. It may not be the most immediate solution. But as I said, don't put yourself in danger. Okay, so for more information on this, all this stuff is on our website. You can always contact me. Oh, that has Mallory on there. That should be me. But contact me, or as I said, Mr. Vintage, or any faculty